Do I have legal grounds to claim damages if a cosmetic procedure I had did not give me the results I was promised and the clinic refuses to refund me? Well, it depends. It depends primarily on what was promised and how that promise was documented. So, for example, especially when you're talking about the cosmetic procedure. So, let's say if you have some sort of an agreement with the clinic, and as part of the agreement, you have specific images that are attached to the agreement, and the clinic ultimately makes representations by virtue of you documenting in this agreement. It could be even written by hand that says, yes, we can ensure you this kind of cosmetic change, let's say in your facial features as per this photo, right? And we can assure you that we can achieve this within whatever degree of your proximity, or chance of success. So if it's something like that, then that becomes an enforceable basis on which you can claim that the clinic had breached its obligations to you, and therefore you can then either seek compensation for breach of contract, or compensation or refund of your payment. So that be on the basis of a breach of contract. But I will tell you, in practical terms, it's in most cases we don't see that kind of level of documentation that will help you rely on the agreement and the attached documents to make that sort of a case. And that's because in most cases, when you go to a clinic, especially cosmetic clinics, you'll just sign, yes, I agree to whatever I agree. And then there will be some other documents that will mention the name of the procedure, but there isn't really, for example, a visual representation of what it is that procedure should mean for you, and certainly clinics representations that they guarantee you or promise to you that more or less you will look like that. So we have, that's very rare to have that kind of evidence. Now, there are other ways of doing it. For example, depends on the cosmetic procedure that you were going through. So let's say if the clinic has a lot of promotional materials and a lot of brochures or Instagram posts, and they show that the specific procedure usually kind of leads to that sort of change. You can use all these marketing materials, including social media posts, to present to both the clinic and the court ultimately, that this is what you expected, and you expected it because of how the clinic advertises its services. It's a little bit of a sort of less strong case, but certainly depending on the extent of the social media, depending on the extent of the clinic's representations to the outside world, that could also be an actionable cause of action. So that's with regard to kind of the breach of contract. Now, then there's, if you have an argument that the clinic breached some other obligations, not so much contractual, but for example, malpractice, and or they were negligent in performing the procedure. So then that's a different type of complaint, and that complaint you can file to, depending on what the clinic is, either the Ministry of Health or MOHAP, which is the Ministry of Health and Prevention, Abu Dhabi, or the DHA in Dubai. So there you can report the clinic's malpractice or sort of negligence to one of these medical authorities, and then they can investigate. And if they do find that they've sort of committed malpractice, then obviously you'll be able to file then a court case on the basis of that report and investigation, and claim compensation. So that's the proper way of doing it. That's the formal way of doing it, and that obviously would only happen if the extent of the defects that you're now suffering, for example, or the losses, the damage you're suffering, are extensive to justify for you to proceed on that basis. But also, it kind of depends on how the clinic was run, what documents were in place. It may be that even if the clinic committed malpractice, there's not enough evidence for the authorities to identify it. So you just need to kind of keep that in mind. And then there's obviously just kind of a more a less formal, a more casual way of trying to seek compensation is just to report, to complain to the clinic itself, and just to put it out in emails and letters from lawyers, documenting it all, and just putting pressure on the clinic to compensate you or redo your procedure because they've done a shoddy job. And by the way, that we have seen. We have seen exactly that. That's why I'm sharing it to you as one of the options. But with enough pressure, certainly cosmetic clinics in particular, they rely on kind of a lot of the time word of mouth. So having bad publicity for them, not talking necessarily about publicity, but bad of sort of word of mouth kind of references is not in their favor. So we have seen also that under that kind of pressure, through either legal notices or just even just kind of strong complaints by the customers or the clients have also responded positively.